Okay. Well, we're 5 minutes into this, so we may as well get started. And this is the Pennsylvania Wine Society's inaugural virtual wine tasting. We're live here at the Armstrong Valley Vineyard and Winery in outside of Halifax, Pennsylvania. And I'm here with the two co-owners of Armstrong Valley. This is Jake Gruver.
Hi, everyone.
And Dean Miller.
Hi.
Jake is the winemaker, and Dean described himself to me as the jack of all trades.
Yes.
He does everything else. So let me see, is everybody, oh, somebody wants to be admitted. Okay. And today we're going to be discussing three of their award-winning wines. A Chardonnay that is a reserve estate Chardonnay, estate being that all the grapes are grown here. And then we're going to be discussing a Pinot Gris, also estate grown, and finally a Cabernet Sauvignon. So before we start, maybe one of you could give us a little history on the background of the history of Armstrong Valley.
Sure. Thanks again for having us. A little bit of history. We put our first vines in 2009. We bought the property back in 2005. It's a 100-acre farm, originally 200 acres. 100 acres left in the original farm. Dates back to 1769. It was one of the original land grants from the Penn's descendants to a gentleman named Robert Armstrong, and that's who the valley is named after, Robert Armstrong. And he owned this property in 1769. And I grew up on a dairy farm in New Jersey, and Dean actually grew up here in Halifax, but did not want to be dairy farmers, did not want to be growing corn or beans, and so the property was in disrepair, I'll say. It needed a lot of work. So the first year or two, we just cleaned up the buildings. We had a barn, a stone house, and 10 other outbuildings. There's an old summer kitchen, an ice house, a granary, tack house, just to name a few. We do offer a little walking tour for people that come when the weather is nice. And so as we were cleaning the property out and trying to decide what we were going to do with it, at that time, another farmer was farming the fields. They were being leased out to a local farmer who grew corn and beans. But as we were in the midst of it, cleaning things up, we needed a break. So we somehow went to a few wineries. We went to Shade Mountain, Nestle's, and a few others. But we thought, they have barns. We have a barn. Did a little research, found out the work that was being done by Mark Chen and a few other viticulturists by Penn State and enologists. Start off by looking what kind of grapes could grow around here. And then at the same time, what kind of wine you could make with the grapes that you could grow. So that was in 2007, 2008. And so we made the plunge in 2009, planted our first vines, a couple of acres. You'll see those around the property when you drive up to the wine room. And then in 2010, we got more aggressive and planted 8,000 vines on an 8-acre plot that's on a hillside, south-facing, good drainage, little rocky soil that has done very well for us. That's our old vineyard, we call it now. It's 10 years old. And you'll see that in these wines that we're tasting today. They come from that vineyard. So the roots are finally getting established. We're getting some consistency. And then I think the next part of that, making a decent wine, is understanding how the weather plays a part and what you can do as far as the process to get a good wine. So in 2010 is when we planted the 8 acres. And then again in 2017, we planted another 8 acres, 8 or 9 acres on the other end of the property. Again, a south-facing slope that has good drainage and good sunshine. And that's only in probably about 3 years. And we're just starting, we'll get our first crop this year. But it does take 3 to 5 years, and then a little bit longer for your vines to mature and to get a decent crop that can be consistent for some of the drier wines. We have some Cabernet Sauvignon up there, so we'll probably make a rosé out of some of that, some more Chardonnay. And we're testing a Sauvignon Blanc. We're also testing some Gewürztraminer and a Petit Verdot. But right now we have about 12 different varietals that we grow with a total of 20 grapes. We have about 3 or 4 full-time people. We have a couple of full-time vineyard folks that help us trying to mechanize as much as we can. We still hand harvest, however, but it is very labor intensive to get those vines established on the trellis and then maintaining them. And as you probably all know, the harvest can vary from one year to the next, depending on your weather. Dry, wet, cold, frost, wind, on top of diseases. So during the 10 years, we've learned a lot. So I feel comfortable now. In the beginning, very stressed. And the hardest part is being able to get a consistent product with the grapes that we grow. And it'll never be 100% consistent, but hopefully it's getting better and it's going to be more approachable. And learning the techniques of processing, I think, has helped reflect what's happening with our wine.
Well, I think the fact that you've won some awards over the recent years speaks to quality and the increasing quality of your wines. What about the harvest this year? How is that looking?
It's been a dry year. We had a late frost, first of all, in May. Every 4, 5, 6 years, we'll get a late frost. So the late frost after buds, some of the buds were out, not all of them. The ones that were out were killed. That happened to us about 5, 6 years ago. Grapevines will have a secondary bud, so that helps. So we'll get about a 60 to 70% crop off those that were out early. Some of the late bloomers, like a Cabernet Sauvignon and some of the other vinifera, come out a little bit later, and they were not affected as much. So right now, because it was so dry this year, we had hardly any rain in July, June and July. It's looking very well. Looking very good. We're getting a little bit of rain this last couple of days, which we need. It was almost too dry. The heat, you want it to be 85, 90 degrees. When it gets up 95, we have some low 90s, the grapevines will start shutting down. So we want to make sure we get the right moisture, not too hot, but a lot of sunshine. And it's been good so far.
That's true. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's similar to what happened in 2018, but I don't want to jinx it, but in 2018, it started raining the 1st of September, and that's when the harvest normally starts. And it just rained constantly September and October, and that's when a lot of folks lost a lot of the grapes. So again, it's farming, and you do what you can with what you're dealt with. So, but right now, it's looking really nice. I said we do hand harvest. We have about a crew, about 30 people, some local folks, retired folks that work at different hours, and we'll pick in the morning from 7 till noon before it gets too hot. But we'll start the week after Labor Day. It'll go 7 or 8 weeks. Having 12 varietals, they all mature a little differently at different times, so that breaks it up for us. We'll pick 2 or 3 varietals each week over a 7 to 8 week period.
And for any of you folks that want to try your hand at picking grapes, get in touch with them. But and also I want to mention, for any of you who have not been here, you should really make the effort to make the drive. It's a really nice drive up the river, and there's a lot of charm. This setting has a lot of charm, and it's just really enjoyable. It's a really nice day trip to come up here, sample some really nice wines. So if you want to launch into
Sure.
the first of these wines, I believe it's the Chardonnay.
Sure. And we're taking questions or comments. Anybody have any comments or questions they'd like to make?
We have a chat thing going, so if you want to, because we have so many people, I didn't want to open it up to everybody trying to chime in at once. So go ahead if you do have questions, and we'll answer them as they come. And in the meantime,
all right. Yeah, our 2018 Chardonnay, it's a stainless steel, but you will notice it's got a little bit of color to it, and you will notice a little hint of oak in it. So it's not 100% pure steel, stainless steel. What I'm finding is, and doing the different styles of the Chardonnay, some of the producers in our area, manufacturers, are letting some of their Chardonnay go through malolactic, the stainless steel. Normally you would not. It keeps it crisper, fruitier. Malolactic will sometimes smooth it out a little bit. And I thought this was a little sharp on the edge, and so I did blend a little bit, tiny bit of some of our oak that had gone through malolactic to kind of smooth out the aroma and the mouthfeel on it. That's why you'll see a little shade of dark oak straw, but also you might get a little slight hint without being too much. It's just very little. But it was a 2018, and then that is one of the first grapes we picked. So even though it started raining that year, we got a good crop off our Chardonnay.
Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah.
Characterize the.
I'll let Dean do the aromas.
Oh my God.
And you got a better.
Sometimes. Yeah, you can tell there's a hint of the real light hint of the like a buttery kind of oak, like Jake said, probably because there's maybe about 5% of a little bit of the oak in there. Otherwise, it does have a little bit of papaya or pineapple. It's just a real light scent.
Still crispy, very crisp, fruity.
And you can also, hold your hand over and swirl a little bit, and then smell a little bit. You'll get those aromas.
So not your West Coast big, bold, and buttery.
Mm-mm.
No, not at all.
No, it's still crisp. Still has a nice light flavor to it. You can tell though it's not as crisp as if it did not quite have a little bit of that tiny little bit of oak in there that we added, but it's still it's nice and round. I'll say nice and round and smooth.
Well, and Marty did mention some of the awards that we've been lucky enough to receive. This Chardonnay at the farm, so it took a silver medal. We also submitted to the San Francisco Chronicle Wine Competition. It took a gold at the San Francisco Chronicle Wine Competition. The Pennsylvania Wine Association rated it at 87 points. And then at Finger Lakes, we just got the results back, it took a silver medal. So it's been pretty consistent, silver, so it's on its way. Now this is the 2018. I will tell you, we also have our 2019, of course, is bottled. We haven't released it yet, but it also took a silver medal up at the Finger Lakes. So it's going to be very close to this one. That one has a little bit more, it's going to have a little similar, some of the blend of malolactic fermented already with the total dry crisp, no malolactic one.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, does anybody have any questions or comments? Some of you do have these wines on hand. I know that.
And
Yes.
and sometimes, like if somebody says they taste something in it, it's kind of general with every variety. There's general, what I want to say, characteristics of that variety. But that doesn't mean that you're going to smell or taste them all. Some people can, some people cannot, and it doesn't mean that you're more or less. It's just that variety usually has those smells in it. Unless it's sometimes if something's really wrong, you'll know that because there'll be like a Band-Aid smell or a really weird fingernail polish smell, and those are not characteristics. Those are bad. So
All wines have what they call a primary flavor that comes from the grape itself, but then you have secondary flavors, aromas that come from how you process it, similar to an oak, or going through malolactic or not going through malolactic. They will affect, so there are different processes. Another big one is the temperature when you're fermenting your grapes. We have a glycol chiller, so we keep them very chilled. Our white wines and our fruit wines as well. They come out again a little crisper, a little fruitier, and it just helps with. And also, if you do in the barrel, I'll switch over a little bit. Do it surlees leave them on the grape skins. But you can even do that in a stainless steel when you're doing a cold fermentation to do an extended maceration on the cells and on the yeast and on the skins. So again, the process, and that's what we're trying to figure out with our grapes that we're able to grow here. And I think the last couple of years I've noticed our whites are ahead of the reds as far as development. We're going to highlight the Pinot Grigio. We also have a nice Vial Blanc, Another wild one out there that's become quite popular for our clientele is a dry Niagara. Now, Niagara can be very overbearing, just the aroma. So it does throw people because we don't sweeten it up. It's an off dry, have a little bit of residual sugar, and it's actually selling better than our sweet Niagara right now.
Is it really?
It is.
I have never had a dry Niagara.
But again, what we try to do on that, because it can be so aromatic, it turns people off, that we pick it early before it gets too strong aromatics. So it has high acidity, low sugar. We will chapelize that to get a little bit of alcohol in there, but we don't let it go too fast.
Chapelize, add sugar.
Add sugar before they ferment. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And real quick. So some of you may have Chardonnay from colder climates, and they will taste different than Chardonnay from warmer climates. So warmer climates, again, they may taste a little fuller body, a little more alcohol, almost like they've been in some oak. And the cooler climates will be crisper. Usually they'll be like, there'll be more minerality to them. They'll just be a little harsher maybe, just a little bit maybe. And the cooler climates will be different than the warmer climates. We're roughly where France is as far as latitude. And in California, they can ripen a little more. So obviously they'll have that warmer climate, even though they may not be higher. They're a little bit lower in latitude from us. So they'll have a little bit warm. So the Chardonnays from California are going to be different than ours, and they're going to be different from France's. But we are a little closer to the French Chardonnays and varieties in general because of our climate and our latitude above the equator.
Having said that, I'll just chime in here a little bit. What you'll see in France, and that's what we equate our process and our methodology to, is a little bit more blending and not a true 100% varietal. Like California can get a strong varietal, whether it be, especially on the red sides, Cabernet, Merlot, or Pinot even up in Russian River Valley and in Oregon. But in France, you'll see a little bit more blending to kind of even them out. And you'll see that with our reds, and I'll talk about that when we get there, that we don't use 100% varietal because we feel it balances it out by putting in and combining a little bit of some other different grapes.
Yeah, France has been doing that for a really long time. Their dry reds, they always, if you get a French wine, and especially a Bordeaux, they'll always have Cabernet, Merlot, maybe Malbec, maybe Petit Verdot. There'll be roughly about 5 different ones they'll blend different percentages, and they may do that differently every year, depending upon the climate, depending upon when they harvested, what was going on. So they want to get the best wine they can. So they will blend those and create this, artwork, let's say, at the end of that. And they always do that. It's very rare to see a single varietal come out of France, especially Bordeaux.
Oh, there are. Let me see, from Robin and Rich Meadows. We like the balance that the little oak provides. It's smoother than a pure steel barrel Chard.
Thanks.
And from Cindy Shingler, I agree. And then Gary, please talk about your oaked Chardonnay and this unoaked Chardonnay. We're tasting the two together.
Okay, yeah, definitely. The oak is fairly new. We've only had it for a couple of years. And
I see it.
Of course, you've got to have oak barrels. So in the beginning, we had new barrels and it was overpowering. It was way too much oak. But what we have now is the 17, and I think that's what you might be tasting is the 17, has got some old neutral, but also some new oak, so it balances it out. It is, again, still high on the oak side, but it's the same grape. This was 17 the year before, and we put a couple barrels together, and we have them every year now since then. But the process, we use 100% French oak barrels, and making sure you have the right balance of new and old. But at the same time, as I talked about the process, putting them in the barrel to ferment on their cerise, they call it, and stirring it and just leaving it there for an extended period of time. We're stirring them, every day or so. initially, and then we slow that down, but leaving them on their particles for extended period of time really helps, I think, to balance them out, to get that oak, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of buttery flavor. But the 17, that's won some award for us as well. I think that took a bronze at the Finger Lakes this year, the 17 oak Chardonnay. So again, it's a nice grape, and we're looking forward to it. We actually did a little bit of Vidal Blanc in our Chardonnay barrels also this year. And I believe, that has helped. So our Vidal Blanc is off dry. It took a silver medal at the Finger Lakes. The more neutral oak, but it just gives it a little bit more dimension, I think, to let it set in there and maybe do a little malolactic, but not a lot, because again, we want to keep it crisp.
Yeah, and California used to oak the crap out of everything. Literally, they would oak, and the older generation, I don't care how old you are, but the older generation, a lot of the people really, really liked a lot of oak. I mean, you literally like chew in the barrel. But some of the younger generation now would they don't want what their parents had. Heaven forbid you drink what your parents drank. So they're looking for more different blends, lighter oak sometimes. So we're trying the different, we're trying a little bit of oak, not too much oak, or trying different blends. And that also appeals to some of the newer generation the newer generation is not loyal to the brand. They just want to try new things. And so we're for that. We're going to try a couple of new things, couple different blends. So we're not as oaky as it used to be. And I don't even know if California is really oaking things like they used to. I think they're also seeing the trend away from too much oak. But again, if you add a little bit of oak, especially the Chardonnay, you will smooth it off a little. It'll be a little easier to drink, as far as it won't be as acidic.
The folks that were trying the two, they have any comments they want to make?
Well, okay, so here are a couple of comments. Yeah, I'd like to see some comments about what you think about the taste, but in the meantime, Leanne asked, what is in your Armstrong blend? I think we may have answered that. But
Armstrong blend?
What you may have blended into the Chardonnay, I think he's already answered.
Yeah, that's all Chardonnay. Just like I said, 5% of oak versus the stainless steel.
And then Cindy Shingler wants to know if a little commercial here, if these wines if this wine is available at Wegmans, and specifically she's asking about the oak Chardonnay.
No, it's not.
I don't think the oak is, but the stainless steel is.
But you can, if you're in Pennsylvania, you can order, and here's the plug for us, 3 bottles or more, and then we'll ship it free. So if you want the oak Chardonnay, right, there you go. If you want the oak Chardonnay, just order at least 3 bottles and the shipping's free, and then you can get it shipped right to you. It's all good.
And then Dave sort of asked a little tongue-in-cheek question here. He wants to know from Dean, how old is the older generation?
Well, and I say the older generation, I'm approaching 60. We'll just go with that. But your parents, when you were maybe in your 30s or something, and your parents were if they were drinking wine, when they were in their 50s or 60s, and it seemed like, they were old then, when you were 30. A lot of the people that long ago, let's say 20 or 30 years ago, were drinking Chardonnay that was oaked. And it was, now the younger generation coming up who are in their 20s are trying different things, and they definitely don't want what their parents had. They would like something different, new, whatever it is. And so hopefully that answers your question.
Real quick, Dean had mentioned about the shipping. We do have an online store. We do offer free shipping. However, we've also set up a discount code for PWS members. If you put in a promotional code, coupon code PWS, you'll also get 10% off your purchases for 3 or more bottles. You get 10% off and free shipping if you put in that code PWS.
And a couple more comments real quick. Gary says, we are enjoying both Chardonnays very much. Nicely done. And Dave Williams asks, you mean back before the war when bread was only 5 cents a loaf?
Yes, back before whichever war you want to pick. Yes.
Well, and the other thing I want to mention too is, the different styles of oak or non-oak, but it depends on what you're drinking, or if you're eating with a meal and what you're eating and what you prefer, or if you're just having a glass of wine. I like the cold, crisp, unoaked, for an afternoon, sitting in the sun on the porch, whatever, or fresh. But if you're going to eat with a meal, maybe the oak would be a little bit better, but it's totally up to your taste, but different styles for different occasions.
And in general, if you're drinking any kind of white, if it's too cold, I mean, if you pull it right out of the fridge and start drinking it, you're not going to get some of the aromas and some of the flavors. It should be roughly about 50, 55 degrees at the most, maybe, but about 50 degrees. And then the aromas and the flavors will open up a little bit. If it's too cold, I mean, you might as well just drink water, it's just cold. But you want to have that be maybe just let it sit a second or a little bit out on your counter before you open it up and drink it, because too cold, you won't appreciate the nuances.
What I have heard, if you don't have a wine fridge with temperature control where you want it, you put it in your refrigerator, especially on the whites, to get the bottle out an hour before you're going to drink it, an hour before dinner. Just let it sit on the counter for the whites. That'll warm it up enough so that it's approachable and you get those aromatics that you're looking for.
Do you want to move on now to the Pinot Gris?
Pinot Gris.
Do you prefer to call it Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio?
I call it Pinot Grigio, except when I'm working the vineyard, I call it Pinot Gris. That's the grape that it comes from. So now this one's going to hit you in the face a little bit. It's going to be very strong aroma. We need a dump bucket. More glasses down.
Oh, just drink it.
Do you want me, is there a bucket over here?
No, there isn't.
That's good. So a little fun fact, quick. Pinot Gris actually came from France. So initially, the Pinot Gris grape came from France, and probably around 1300s or something, and it eventually migrated down to Italy, and now Italians call it Pinot Grigio. It's the same damn grape, you know what I mean? It's just a different name. So when people say Grigio or Gris, it's the same thing, but Pinot Gris, initially, the grape came from France. Now, Pinot Grigio is kind of an Italian thing.
A little different style, too. I think the Grigio, it's normally a dry, but off dry, a little bit of sugar in there. This one, and quite frankly, I think it's a little off-putting, the aroma. Sometimes it's one of those that you leave uncorked, with whites, but this one, it can be very, the off-putting a bit, but it's very strong in the flavors, and people like that for some reason. We did this a year before. This is the 19, the 18 did the same thing, and we sold out of it, and we're almost out of this one as well. But people like it. If you like a Pinot Grigio, it's got the lime, lemon, little apple, but crisp, zesty, but it can be a little bit too much aroma for some people.
And this is not 100% dry, not 100%. You can taste a little tiny bit of sweetness in the background when you taste it.
A little bite at the end there.
A little tiny bit. There is. I usually don't like Pinot Gris that you buy. And okay, so also, Pinot Gris is like almost second to Chardonnay as far as people buying wine. It's really very, very popular, but it gets a bad rap sometimes because there's a lot of people putting out Pinot Gris, and some of them are really bad. And so, Pinot Gris is terrible, or Pinot Grigio. But get a decent, don't buy bargain basement Pinot Grigios. Buy a decent one. It doesn't cost that much, and you'll appreciate it more. It'll be nicer. Since it's very popular now, and people are, they want to get in on that, and they're putting these out like crazy. They may not be very good. So they may be blended with who knows what, and it might be nasty. But get a decent one, 15 to 20 bucks, it should be fine. Don't get the $8 one. Please don't do that. That's not good.
As we mentioned, or a lot of it is your personal taste and appreciating what you're drinking. We do drink a lot of other wines, regional wines and national, international wines, just to again train our palate, understand what's out there, what people are liking or not liking. So it is fun to do that. but at the same time, there is a wide range on the Pinot Grigio. If you can find a good one, stick with it. But again, we'll take some comments on this, what people think, if those that have it to taste. Because again, I'm 50-50 on this one, but like I said, we sold out last year and this year. But we got a few cases left. But
I mean, I like it. You know, usually, like I said, I'm not a Pinot Gris fan, but I like ours. Like I said, there's a tiny little bit of sweetness in the background, so you can, you can tell.
It is, and that's what sometimes in this area people love that cow, that aromatic hit you get with it.
And the Pinot Gris grape, actually, the grape itself is purple.
Red.
Yeah, red.
Red to purple.
Red.
Yeah.
So, you know, in general, color. So in general, the wine gets its color from the skin. But when you process the Pinot Gris or Pinot Grigio grape, we process it and take it right off the skin. We don't want that color.
Or any of the tannins or tartness from it.
Yeah. So it's odd though that this grape itself is red, but everybody makes a white wine out of it. The grapes are always red, but everybody makes a white wine. It's one of the few that the grape is not that color that you create the wine from.
Actually, I've seen some rosés.
Yeah,
yes.
they'd have to leave it on the skin a little bit to get some color.
Now, some people have asked, number one, going back to purchasing this, how long does the Pennsylvania Wine Society discount last?
We have it on there indefinitely, so we'll leave it on for as long as, you know.
It would be on there for now.
Yeah, it'll be on there for a while.
And then a comment from Christine, the color is interesting to me.
It's very light.
Very, very light.
Yeah, it's very, very light.
And then Cindy Shingler, it's a little sweeter than I like, but I am not a Pinot Grigio fan. Well, there.
Yes, Cindy, I am not a Pinot Grigio fan either, but the little hint of sweetness in it kind of covers up some of the acidity sometimes. Sometimes there's a very attacking acidity at the end of Pinot Gris sometimes, and this calms it down a lot. So for me, it's like better with a little bit of sweetness. I'm a dry person, but sometimes a little tiny bit also will bring out a little bit more aroma or flavors, but it has to be very little.
Okay. And let me see, Robin and Rich Meadows, they said it's a little too sweet for us, but we find it is still drinkable.
Well, that's
good. Leanne says, I agree with Rob. But I'll tell you this, it's got more flavor than a lot of the stuff out there that I have one friend that characterizes Pinot Grigio as lemon water with a kick.
Yeah, see, you have to make sure, look specifically for Pinot Grigio or Pinot Gris, but it has to be from somebody that knows how to make wine. Because if don't get it from bargain basement ones that are like I said, $8 or $7 or $8, $9, because they're just throwing something together and that may taste terrible. Look for really good or pretty decent producers, and you'll appreciate that more. And I think it'll taste better.
This is available at Wegmans also. I think they do carry the Pinot Grigio.
All right, so there's one you can get locally.
Yep.
And let me see, Robin and Rich Meadows, they commented that they do agree that this is very flavorful. Cindy Shingler, at least it tastes like something. Most are tasteless. Yeah.
I agree.
And then Black. Who's Black? Oh, Black Cat. I know who that is. That's Lynn. What contributes to the unusual, almost petrol nose? That's exactly what I was picking up, was petrol almost.
Years ago, I'll relate this story real quick. Years ago, we got a Riesling. And the Riesling we got from
a local
down toward Jersey. And we opened it up the one day, and I swear to God, it was just petrol all over that thing. It was
not drinkable.
It was horrible. Like the nose was totally gasoline or petrol, whatever, And the next day, I looked it up to see why it was like that. I thought, well, you don't want that. Well, that's a characteristic of Riesling that some people actually go for. They want that. And we find out that if there's the less oxygen you have in the process, the more likely you might create that nose, that petrol. But once it's open and let sit for a little bit, all that will blow off.
Yeah, the next day it was much different. It just
that Riesling the next day was like, you didn't even smell any of it. It was all gone.
But to answer her question, they were picked a little early. And I think that's what attributes to that strong aroma and flavor that you're getting off of this. I thought maybe they were picked maybe a little too early. But you know, and for different reasons, whether it was going to rain or whatever, we did pick them at that time. But I think, and I thought maybe, again, it was, let's say, a fault. But it's still selling well. But it's because when you pick them, the longer you let them sit on the vine, the less you're going to get less of that aroma and flavor.
Do you find that this nose blows off after a while?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why, because I taste, we have some tasters down in the taste room that were open yesterday, and they taste totally different.
Yes.
So I would agree that if you let this set overnight, open it up, you know, then you know, everybody put it back in the bottle, let it set overnight, it'll be different tomorrow. Yeah.
I actually enjoy the petrol.
Well, see, and
Yeah, some people do.
the petrol is sometimes something that people actually look for.
Yeah.
But you know, we got that Riesling, it was so strong, we were like, oh my God, that's terrible.
You know, I like a strong aromatic, like a Gewürztraminer, you know, and sometimes, you know, again, that can be putting off to people, but at the right balance, you know.
Now you just planted the converts?
We had, we're gonna have a little crop this year, but more next year. So it's gonna be a couple of years yet, but we've got some in our new plantings.
Okay. So maybe what we can do now is move on to the
Cabernet.
Cabernet.
Real quick, before we do that though, I'd like to plug our Vidal Blanc, because our Vidal Blanc rye, again, I'm a big Sauvignon Blanc guy. I love Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. We have some planted, that's another one we put in our new vineyard. So we get a crop off of that this year as well. But in the meantime, I think the Vidal Blanc that we have right now, it's our 2019. It's along the same lines as the Pinot Grigio, very aromatic, a little more grapefruit than your lemon, lime, apple you get out of Pinot Grigio. But again, a lot of flavor, a lot of aroma, and it's doing quite well. So if you like the Pinot Grigio, I might suggest you try a semi-dry Vidal Blanc. I think they're coming along very nicely. And actually the Vidal Blanc is going to be a little drier than this Pinot Grigio. It's going to have almost nothing. This has like 1.5% sugar in it. The Vidal Blanc was nice, smooth on the acids, and so we didn't have to do any back shooting.
Is that the same one that we tasted the other day?
It is.
Yeah.
So I can tell you, yes, you would enjoy this. Give it a try. Is that one available?
It is not.
Okay.
That one is
But
not.
you can get it online.
And oh, by the way, if you go to Wegmans, you don't get the PWS discount. So, but if you get on the online store,
Yeah, it's on the online.
And what is the website?
Well, just go to our website, Armstrong Valley Winery.
Armstrong Valley Winery.
Yep.
.com.
.com.
Armstrong Valley.
And it'll say shop our wines, and then you go in there and you have to say you're over 21, all that stuff. And then you can go in and you can look at the reds, the whites, those, you know, sweet, dry, whatever, that's all good.
All right, we'll go on to the Cabernet.
Wait, I want to know if Cindy is really in Italy.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because
right?
I see the sun back there, but that hasn't moved at all. Good job.
All right.
All right. So we're going to.
We're going to do the Cabernet.
Yeah. Where'd you take?
Get a glass.
Get a glass. Okay.
So also something fun, the Cabernet Sauvignon, pronounced Sauvignon. People can say Cab Sav. That's not right. So the Cabernet Sauvignon comes from Cab Franc and Sauvignon Blanc. It's a blend. It's like the baby, like a Cabernet Franc and Cabernet Sauvignon Blanc had a baby, and that's the Cabernet Sauvignon. Yeah, right, like that. It's originally, I think, from Bordeaux region of France, and they blend it like crazy over there, and they use it like crazy over there.
I will tell you also, as you're tasting it or looking at it, listening to us, this one is a blend. It's 76% Cabernet Sauvignon. There's also 10% Merlot, 10% Cab Franc, and 4% Petit Verdot in this wine.
And we can do that because anybody, and at least in Pennsylvania, we can say the Cabernet Sauvignon, if it's at least 75% of that grape. I know it's a little cheating sometimes, but we can say it's, as long as it's at least 75% of that grape, we can call it that. So it can, when you see any Pennsylvania winery or whatever, and it says Cabernet Sauvignon, they could have other stuff in there, but it's legal as long as it's 75% of that grape. Not that we're trying to cheat you out of anything, but we're just kind of putting that out there.
This wine has a gorgeous color.
Mm-hmm.
We have found our reds really get a dark skin, a dark color with our climate around here. We have no problem keeping it a dark color. Even the Jamerson sometimes can get light, or Pinot, a little bit lighter, Merlot. But the Cabernets do really nicely.
It's very nice. It's very nice nose to it. There's like dark fruit in there. I haven't tasted it yet.
Yeah, and this one we just opened. It wasn't open for a while yet.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times, if you get a Cabernet Sauvignon and there's a lot of acidity to it, it will age well. So you shouldn't drink it right away because it'll be a little acidic. There are some that they say, and you can check. Some they say you could drink within 2 or 3 years, and then it's ready. I mean, obviously it's ready to drink. Some they say wait 20 years. I'm not doing that. why the hell would I buy one? It'd take 20 years to drink. What the
we have a few.
I'm not doing that.
In the library. This got a gold medal at the Finger Lakes wine competition last month. Gold medal.
Did we mention the medals? The Pinot Gris has not been entered.
No, it was fairly new, but I didn't enter it. We didn't have a lot of it, and we're getting low on it already.
So this has a little bit of acidity, a lot of tannins. It's very dry.
It is a 2017. What we have found, and you find some other areas doing this, especially in Tuscany, leave it in a barrel 1.5 years, 2 years. We age a little bit longer to soften it up, and it has helped a lot. Leave them in the barrel for a little longer.
A lot of scientists try to figure out, or enologists and scientists and everything, what happens in the damn barrel, right? They don't know. But it seems to change the wine chemically a little bit. It softens it. It complexes it, whatever you want to call it. Gives it flavor. Yeah, different flavors pop out. Sometimes it's too new to taste right away, so let it age. And if you would take wine out of a barrel, like every year, it'll taste different every year that it's been in the barrel. It changes it. And
I think also it reduces it because you're evaporating. We're filling them up, every month, topping them off. You're getting a little more concentrated flavor, aroma, all the essentials that you like. Because you're just adding more to it. It's just concentrating those flavors.
We really didn't say that, right? Usually the dry reds are really good with fattier meats, fattier foods a little bit, because it'll cut that fat out a little bit. The whites in general are better with lighter foods. Even the oak Chardonnay you could have with some meat, but because it's a little heavier, a little more viscous, but you want to have lighter foods with the whites, the dry whites, and you want to have a little heavier foods you could have with the reds.
Having said all that, the Cabernet Sauvignon, we're kind of like on the edge. We're not the best climate, we're not the worst climate. They can grow it a little further south, not so much north. But as you probably all know, Cab Franc is one that can do very well for us. And that one has also place for us in a lot of awards, the Cabernet Franc. Then we got a double gold at the San Francisco on that one. But again, people like Cabernet Sauvignon. Cab Franc doesn't get the recognition. It's like the stepchild,
Yeah.
And it can be a little overbearing for some people. But you're finding, and you'll see it a lot in I think all the areas of recognition and competitions are Cab Franc, because it grows very well. It's hardy, and with the right process, it makes a nice wine. But that's why we put a little bit in this one here to balance it out. But people love their Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, and usually Cab Franc it's not on people's list to get unless you're in an area that has Cab Franc, like Cabernet Sauvignon out in California. If you go to California, you just say Cab. You don't say Sauvignon. You say Cab, and they know exactly what you're talking about. Or Merlot. But if here we have Cab Franc, we have Cabernet Sauvignon, so you have to differentiate that here. And even in France, they use Cab Franc when they do blending. And Cab Franc by itself, if you go to a state store in Pennsylvania or you go somewhere, Cab Franc by itself as a single varietal is very difficult to find. Usually somebody's blending it. So we do it as a single varietal, and some Pennsylvania wineries do it like that, but it's very hard to find other places.
It's really an up and coming grape, I think, in New York and Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I would like for our the Cab Franc in the eastern part of the country to be like Cabernet Sauvignon in the west part of the country. This like it'll be our Cab, as Cab Franc, because I think we can do it well here.
Excellent.
Any comments on the Cabernet?
We do have some comments. And Lynn says that this pairs great with our fresh blackberries and not bad with Bachetto. And then Cindy Shingler comments that I'm tasting it with some rare filet mignon. Is that like as we speak?
Wait, wow, and you're not sharing? What's that about? And she's still in Italy with that same sunset. Good job. Look at that. Nice.
Oh my.
Oh man, she is ready.
So
Wow.
Hungry.
Good job. Yeah, I like it.
I should mention too that in addition to these three excellent wines, Armstrong Valley also has what 40-some wines.
Yes, we do.
Almost 50. Almost 50. We're in the country here, so we have a lot of sweet wines, and you have to do that. You just have to have sweet wines. People, in the country, that's how it is. But if you make one dry wine, it's got to be good. You can't just like poop that out there and say, you're just gonna make some dry, whatever it is. Because the dry people have a much stronger palate. They have much more discerning. They much, so we like to do all of our wines dry, sweet, or in between as best as we can, because if you're not doing that, you're not really doing stuff. You gotta make the best wine you can in the category you're making it and the way you're making it, et cetera. So you don't just pop out some, Cabernet Sauvignon and walk away. You got to do it good or well. I mean, you got to do it well.
Going back to what you were talking about earlier with regard to generations, or just in general, do you find that people are gravitating a little more maybe towards dry wines?
Well, when people start tasting wine here or anywhere, they're going to do sweet wines. If they're not like, if you didn't grow up with wine, like we were in France and Italy some years ago, and the people that were in those families that made the wine, these kids, and it was legal over there, would taste wine or have wine with meal, whatever, and they were very used to it. But over here, you can't have real wine till you're like 21, and then apparently when you hit 21, it's a magical number and you're good. But before that, they would have they would go to sweet wine first because it was easier to drink. You don't have to worry about it being acidic or tannic or whatever. But we find that people who started with sweet wine gravitate slowly to semis, and then they may try some dry wine. And usually they'll try the dry wines if they're with food. And you should have wine regardless with food. It's like a thing.
I think they see the stories that, red wine's good for you. They want to do what's good for them. So we have started a few. We do a blackberry Merlot. Again, it's going to be off dry, semi-dry, a little bit on the sweeter side, but got blackberry. So the fruitiness cut some of the tannic off the dry red that they don't like.
Yep.
We also just came out with a raspberry Chamberset. So they got a little bit of red raspberry in there. So it makes it a little fruitier. And those have been selling very well for us for that transition group.
Yeah, some people equate tannins with like vinegar. It's like dry. It's crazy. But that's so they're not real crazy about dry wine, especially the reds with the tannin. They may try a dry white before they'll do the red, but they move slowly toward that. I think once their palate becomes accustomed, I'm done with sweet wine, so they slowly will move a little bit toward that, which is good, because your palate's evolving. You're trying different stuff.
As you can tell, Dean and I are dry wine drinkers.
Yay.
But the sweet wines pay the bills,
Yeah.
So we're trying to find that balance. But long term, we've even thought about at some point in time, do we split our label for our dry reds and whites versus our sweet and other wines that sell very well. So again, that's down the road. But our focus has been, and mine has always been, getting that consistency year after year. I think our grapes are getting to that point. I think we've got 10 years of experience, and every year is different, understanding the nuances of the process. What do you do, to impact any issues you might come across when you're processing and aging the wines?
Yeah, because the tough thing, every year the climate's going to be different. So every year we pick grapes, everything, it's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be exactly the same. And some people, I want Coca-Cola because it always tastes the same. Well, that's a recipe. You know what I mean? They pop that out like a recipe. They never want Coke to taste different. But when you talk about wine, that's why some years are a little different. Like California, 16 was the great year. 18 was like, meh, and then that's why you can command different prices depending upon that vintage. But in general, you still want to make a good wine every year. You just don't. There's going to be variations in that wine, and it's hard to tell people that sometimes. Well, this didn't taste like last year. Well, it's not going to taste like last year because it's a different vintage. It's a little different. It's the little climate was different, or something else was different. So we don't want to have a recipe like a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi. It's the same thing all the time. But we want to educate people though that you're going to taste something a little different this year because the climate or the rain or the sun or something was a little bit different.
So I think Marty mentioned earlier, we do have the Cabernet Franc. We also do a straight Chamberson that's done very well for us. It was oak for a couple of years, and we blended with like 15% Merlot. And it was a nice year for the Chamberson, and with the Merlot, just balanced it out. It's been very popular for those that don't like the strong tannic of the Cabernet Merlot, but have a nice dry red wine with a more berry flavor from the Chamberson. It's doing very well.
And Chamberson, when you ferment it, the Chamberson is a hybrid that grows very well in the eastern part of the United States here, especially in our area. The Chamberson, when you ferment it can lose tannins. We try to use different processes to keep the tannin.
Sacrificial tannins.
Sacrificial tannin. But we try to use that so we can keep some tannins. But that Chamberson generally is a good go-to for some people, like Jake said, where it's not as tannic. So people don't think it tastes so like tart. And, So once again, it's a good go-to for people that are trying to move into a dry wine without going nosediving right into Cabernet Sauvignon.
Yeah, we have some follow-up comments here. Robin and Rich Meadows, they're asking or commenting that besides the Finger Lakes area, northern Michigan has some nice Cab Franc wines.
We were supposed to go on a wine trip with some Penn State Extension people to Michigan, to those, and then
COVID.
Virus hit and everything just blew apart. But we were supposed to go, and we're very excited about that because they have a whole bunch of wineries in that peninsula, and yeah, it was going to be. I'm upset about that.
Yeah, they also have a lot of interesting cold climate grapes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Averill says she is pairing her wine with mushroom spread.
Nice, very nice.
And Cindy Shingler says, I take my wine tastings seriously. Oh, I love Averill's mushroom spread. So
you should contact April. Get that recipe.
And then back to Robin and Rich, and they're saying the Lee Lanao Peninsula.
Yes.
We grew up in that region.
Yeah, and that's where we were supposed to go up there with the Penn State people, and then it like I said, all just blew apart, and yeah, that's too bad.
So I think we've run the gamut here, and that pretty much finishes up an hour's worth of chit chat here about these three great wines. And keep in mind, there's a lot of other wines that they have here, and it's a great drive up the river to visit this place. You'll get the PWS discount both at the winery as well as on their online store. So, please.
If you do come in, just make sure you mention the PWS, and so they'll put it in the system. It'll come up with a discount for you.
Yes.
All right. And
you can get a lot of our wines online too that and if you come up, you can taste a bunch that we didn't go through a bunch of them here, but you can taste some more of them, that you'd like to, if you'd like to. We have a Cab Franc that's a single varietal by itself and a couple other things. So, you can taste them here and hang out and whatever. It's all good.
Thank you, Marty.
Thank you. Thank both of you, and thank all of you for attending today. And we'll do this again in 2 Sundays when I'll have Jonas Nisley on hand to discuss Nisley wines. So until then, I think we'll sign off.
I like Cindy's background.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. Thanks for that background. Yeah, right. I love that. That's great.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.